grinding me. I've noticed that there's some software issues on the phones. They've been hacked. And some of them, they probably have hardware issues. I have 5 different cell phones. And witnesses to, this guy's brights on too, big time. Okay, it's interesting how there's 5 phones, and they do not pick up the writing very well. Notice this guy doesn't have his lights on. One of these writing pictures where there was 2 black cars both riding me on the road, waiting for someone to turn into their driveway. Seemed like they were all in on it and they set it up or something. They changed the image to make it appear dark. It was not dark outside. Right now it's not dark. It's about 7:05, 7:10. Okay, it is Thursday, April 7th, 2022. This is day 23. I have pictures that are clear-cut writing, clear-cut, and other people have noticed videos where other people notice gang stalking going on in traffic. People who are not targeted. One of the few times they ride with me, and they notice it. You see what I'm saying? So it's open and shut. That this isn't some kind of brain seizures. It's not schizophrenia, schizoaffective. It's not some kind of psychosis. It's not delusions of any sort. Not disassociation. It's clear cut with the collaborating testimony, corroborating, whatever the fuck you want to call it. The testimony that coincides. It goes along with it. Also, I have several witnesses to the fuming. And when I'm fumed, my voice pattern changes. Okay? It's almost like I seem like someone else, because that's what happens. Like when you get high, for example, you seem like somebody else, right? You become some kind of, I'm high, I'm giggly, right? It's like you have another personality. This guy brights big time, big time. I hope this comes out. So this is part of why I need people to rally, especially law enforcement. If you're working law enforcement, or you're a private detective or something, to rally and to record this stuff and to bear witness to these events taking place. Okay, my family and my brothers have careers. My parents are old, and in their own ways they've made it clear that they don't want to be involved. I consider my parents blameless, but my brother's not blameless. My parents bore the fruit of me, and they've endured a lot of hardship as a result of that particular action. And wisdom is proven right by its children, by her deeds. So, there's that. And it is outrageous that with witnesses to fuming, that the government would try to pretend that I'm mentally ill or something. You see what I'm saying? And that I'm a threat when they're fuming me and provoking me with 22 witnesses on record, several witnesses to fuming, countless witnesses to the provocation. And it doesn't take a genius to see that when someone denies you justice by itself and runs a psyop on you, that's a form of provocation. There's no excuse for provoking an American citizen for his free speech. Okay, this guy's brights on big time, big time. For his free speech and freedom of expression. There is no national security threat. I'm not in a terrorist organization. Okay? There's no credible threat that they're addressing. They're just provocation. When I'm by myself, I might start yelling or something because I'm being provoked to the umpteenth degree. And that is completely consistent with normal human behavior. Let's face it, normal people, when they get upset, will yell, fuck that motherfucker or something. Okay? You make him a little tougher than other people, he'll say something a little tougher. That does not mean mental illness or a credible threat. There are people who threaten people as gang members and then kill them, and go to prison, get put on parole, who aren't being targeted. So why am I targeted? Why am I singled out? That's selective law enforcement, it's civil rights violations, etc. This guy's his brights on. And why, with all the law enforcement agencies in America that are aware of this, that they have not come out publicly and try to put an end to it. Clear cut, a total failure of the system, a failure of the politicians, the governors, etc., mayors, a failure of law enforcement, a failure of political groups, a failure of church groups, a failure of community groups. Okay? They all are spineless, tail tucked. I don't know how they can get their dicks up in the bedroom. They're so tail tucked. Okay? And things like this have to be said because they need to appreciate their failure. If I didn't throw that in there, would it help? Would I be expressing myself effectively? That's part of why we have freedom of expression, so we can express ourselves effectively at times like this. Tail tucked, scared, fraidy cats, pansies, pussies, wussies. Yeah, this guy is bright, shining bright. Afraid to man up. They'll act real tough in the gym. They'll shoot their guns at the range and act like they're bad and they'll pull you over, motherfucker. Yeah, see that person? See that? That person cut me off on purpose and also cut off my speech. And they're brining me from behind. Okay? Probably was listening. A good chance someone was listening to me and collaborated with that person. Oh yeah? Oh yeah? Well, fucking take that. Tail tucked. Ver in virtue means man. And ver is not in the word oppressor. It's not in the word tyrant. It's not in the word corrupt. Ver in virtue means man. Who would doubt it? How many of you never heard the phrase, man up and take care of your responsibilities? If you're in law enforcement, do you have a responsibility to the community? If you're in the military, do you have taken an oath to uphold the Constitution? Imagine you're a military officer. To him whose much is given is not much expected. If America tells you to fucking human traffic people for the military, okay, is it treason to your country to fucking report that? Or is it treason to your country to not report that? Like, I gotta explain this shit. Even if the law was written, who gives a shit about the corrupt man's law? If the law was to fuck your family in the ass and eat them, would you do that? I really have to explain to these fucking pea-brain cowards this type of stuff. Tell me that wouldn't piss you off. This guy's brights on big time. It's a form of provocation. When they play stupid about the fact, the implications of ver in man means virtue. In Mark 7, Jesus made it clear that he agrees with me and not anyone else. He said, you have a fine way of setting aside the commands of God to observe your own traditions that you hand down, that you handed down, generation to generation, that you handed down. You have a fine way of setting aside the commands of God. And he said it 3 times. First time he said it, Isaiah said, these people are hypocrites. Their worship of me is merely with their lips. Their hearts are far from me. That he says you have a fine way of setting aside. And that's the first time he's saying something to that effect. Then he says, in that series of scriptures, that he says, you have a fine way of setting aside the commands of God to obey your own traditions. Then he goes on to say it again. He says, you have a fine way of setting aside the commands of God. So he's yelling at them, obviously. I think he's saying it, you have a fine way of setting aside the commands of God. I'm a broken record. Or is he like, look, you have a fine way of setting aside the commands of God. And he's yelling it, and he says it again. The sharp, double-edged sword of Scripture. Not saying it dull and boring. But Jesus in their Bible. The idea that's superimposed, because it's a story, on the actual top martial artist, son of God, who was African. Even in their story, Amos 9:7, are you not the same as me, as the Cushites, O children of Israel? Are you not the same to me? Why do they say that about the Cushites? Why not the Philistines? Why not the Amorites or the Jebusites? Why did they say the Cushites? Because the story is a superimposition on African moral tradition, moral truth, really, universal pinpointed moral truth, because Africans are the most diverse people, and when they came together in Egypt and Nubia, there was a bunch of diverse tribes, and they said these universal qualities make someone the king of kings. That's why the original pharaohs were actually good people, as the story goes, because they were universal king of kings. And before Abraham was the universal king of kings in Egypt, And John said, he who has come is greater than me because he was before me. The spirit of the African king of kings were greater than Abraham according to their own book when he put 1 + 1 together. The king of kings before me were before the king of kings spirit that is generated and made greater every generation. And John the Baptist was called a son of woman, where Jesus called himself the Son of Man. Different spirits. Right. It's kind of mental. You see, as usual, I calm myself down. I'm very aware of myself. I'm crossing Monterey and Edmondson where it turns into Tenet. I'm going to turn right over there on Church Street into the shopping center. It is Thursday, okay, April 7th, 2022. It's day 23. Do I seem like somebody whose brain function is not operating correctly? Or do I have a certain organization of thoughts when I'm obviously not being fumed heavily? But nonetheless, my voice pattern is not normal. And that has to do with being fumed lightly and the overall effect, the compounded effect of being fumed every day. This is not a case of, hey, send this guy to the psych ward. This is a case of secure this man justice, or you're no better than the Ku Klux Klan, you coward. Okay? And to get this guy compensated and with a consideration on his martial art prowess. How much should the top martial artist be paid when he's cheated by all others and society? How much should the guy with the most logical church argument be paid when he's cheated by the churches? And I don't care about money. But that is a basic part of justice. And God is a God of justice. You can't pay me off. Okay? But you need to compensate me for the injustices leveraged at me, especially poisoning me as the top martial artist ever possible during the best years of my life, which reduced my presentation, which caused all of society harm when they were not able to see me in my pinnacle because I was sabotaged by jealous cowards from inferior bloodlines. Thank you.